With the exception of Godzilla's roar and the roar of that of the T-Rex from Jurassic Park, there is one all-time coolest sound ever in the sci-fi horror lexicon, and it goes something like this. God, I am fully torqued. Let's rock! Alien Romulus. It is the 7th film in the Alien franchise, and no, I am not counting the AVP flicks because those films are fan fiction garbage, and if you think otherwise, you can fight me. And stars Kaylee Spaney, David Johnson, and is directed by one of my all-time favorite horror directors, Fede Alvarez. In the film, a group of unwitting space folk break into an abandoned starship only to be murdered, mutilated, and tormented by the horrors that lie. Blah, blah, blah. You've seen it all before. Be forewarned. Shit shall be spoiled. Give me the good stuff. In a time when it is all too common for blockbuster films to ignore the past or outright create alternate timelines altogether, Romulus walks the road less traveled and embraces its lineage, the good, the bad, and the ugly. With the inclusion of the divisive black goo from Prometheus and Covenant and the heavy homages to weaker films in the franchise like Resurrection, Romulus not only makes the wide range of films and ideas feel cohesive, but wears the franchise's flaws on its chest like a motherfucking badge of honor. And keeping in line with Romulus honoring and expanding the lore, the opening of this movie fucking slaps. We get to see what became of the OG Xenomorph, and then later find out it continued to wreak havoc on board another space station before it was killed by the Romulus science officer. I want to see that fucking movie. If there's a star of the show besides the titular extraterrestrial, it is without question David fucking Johnson. Kaylee Spaney, you're a doll, but you're gonna have to settle for second place on this one. Johnson gives a knockout performance as the glitchy android with a heart, and from very early on in the picture, it becomes pretty clear that he's going to be a scene stealer, but at the midpoint of the movie, his character gets an upgrade and pretty much becomes a whole other person, and you realize that he is essentially giving two leading performances, and this shit is on another level. Hollywood, give this man more jobs! This movie takes some bold-ass swings, and I am fucking here for it. Not only do we get a wild third-act plot twist involving a xenomorph engineer-human hybrid, which was rad and very reminiscent of the newborn from Alien Resurrection, but we also get a very interesting return of the science officer android Ash, played by the now-deceased Ian Holm, and is brought to life by motion capture and some very questionable CGI. He's a broken-down robot. He don't need to look lifelike no more. Why couldn't you just use a practical animatronic like you did with Bishop in Alien 3? These are gutsy swings, to say the least. Hell, even showing what happened to the original Alien is a bold move. These things won't be for everyone, but for me they really work, because with franchises this many movies deep, the bigger the swing, whether it works all the way or not, the more likely I am going to enjoy the picture because it's breaking away from the mold, mixing things up, which I always really appreciate. Speaking of mixing shit up, the zero-G sequence is not only one of the coolest in the entire franchise, but all the little breadcrumbs laid out early on in the film that all come to fruition when Kaylee Spaney's character Rain turns off the artificial gravity generator and starts lighting aliens up like fireworks on the 4th of July. Fuck! That shit was dope. Speaking of shit, I like me a ticking clock movie, but only when the amount of time makes fucking sense. I would say at about the halfway point, our characters find out they have about 45 minutes before they collide with the outer rings of a planetary system, and quite frankly, that is too little time for the amount of shit that happens in the back half of this flick. You could have said they had 2 hours and that would have been dope, but 45 minutes goes by fast even when you're not running for your fucking life. Especially when you get down to the last 10 minutes and that for some reason is taking longer than the 35 minutes that came before. Folks, that's not how time works. A little bit more time on the clock would have kept things believable while still keeping the tension taut. We already covered the CG bullshit, so I don't see any reason to tread over that ground again, because the last thing I want to do is beat a dead fucking horse. But speaking of beating dead horses, if I never hear the words perfect organism again, it'll be too goddamn soon. Or for that matter, any combinations of the words get away from her, you, and bitch. And while we're at it, no more third act climaxes where we kill the monster just to have it come back on a different spaceship and force our heroine, who is now in her PJs, to hop in an astronaut suit and blow it the fuck out into space just before she delivers her sign-off message to the audience right before the credits roll. And I am all for female empowerment, but please, God, no more Ripley ripoffs. I actually really do think that Kaylee Spaney is very, very good in this, and her portrayal feels wholly different than that of Sigourney Weaver's. But all the imagery surrounding her character, including short hair, Reeboks, and machine guns, just feels like shit that we have seen time and time again. And look, I get it, we all love the first two Alien movies. They are superior films. But fan service for the sake of fan service can fuck you. Just ask Marvel. I don't need another Ripley stand-in. I don't need them to try and outdo the original chestburster scene. I don't need Ash or Rook or whatever the fuck that turkey's name is in this to go on about the perfect organism or not lie to me about my fucking chances. You're running that shit into the ground at this point, and it is a shame because Romulus had the potential to be in the same league as those first two films, if not for how frustratingly beholden to them it is. God damn, I need a fucking drink. Go ahead and give me that rewatch. Fede Alvarez makes insanely rewatchable flicks, and Romulus is no exception. No hyperbole, no bullshit, this sequel had some of the best, most engaging, and exciting sequences in the entire franchise. And I know I'm gonna rewatch the shit out of it, because I rewatched the shit out of his other movies. And I am chomping at the bit to get back in the theater and fuck this puppy again as soon as humanly possible. Ever since I got out of the theater, I have really been trying to dissect my feelings as best I can on this flick. I know that I absolutely adore about 70% of it. The story is slick and the creativity's on fire, but the fan service elements are eye-roll inducing, and that really bums me out because fuck if it almost wasn't a knock out of the park. I'm torn between giving this movie an 8 out of 10 because I had so much fun watching it, and the 7 out of 10 that it probably deserves because it's not as good as it could have been. So I suppose we will land on a 7.5 out of 10 overall for the Jony horror score. All that being said, I do not think I have been this happy overall with an Alien film on a first time watch since the first two movies. So you take that for what it's worth. Well, that's gonna do it for this episode of the Jony Horror Reviews. I am your host, Jony Horror, encouraging all you space colonists and glitchy androids to be good to one another. Be half-decent human beings and artificial persons. And always remember, two possibilities exist. Either we're alone in the universe, or we are not. Both are equally terrifying.